Hey, Business 101. Welcome back. And this, as promised, is a short video on a review for midterm exam number 2, which will go live this week. This video is intended to really give you a full heads up on what you really have to have a good grasp of in order to do well on this second midterm review. All right, so let's climb right in. First of all, about logistics. The exam will go live on Wednesday. We'll be open all day Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and we'll close on Saturday at 11:59 p.m. This, as already stated in the announcement, the logistics announcement that I gave you. Coverage will be modules 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So, like the first midterm, 5 modules covered for this midterm. Now, specifically, there will be a total of 48 questions on this exam, and they will be worth a total of 61 points because the 4 short answer questions will each be worth 4 points each. All the remaining questions will be worth 1 point each. Very much like midterm exam 1. All right, so let's climb straight into the content then. Module number 6, as you may remember, was on the topic of organizing business, and so you will have a few questions dealing with job specialization. Remember that job specialization is the principle that leads to division of labor. And division of labor is really the principle that lifts organizations above mere sole proprietorships in terms of output, performance, and growth. The ability to have specialized workers with specialized roles and therefore leverage the division of labor to grow into a larger corporation or larger organization, right? You'll have a few questions on that. You'll have a few questions on typically the types of organizational structure that you will see in terms of tall versus flat organizations and the pros and cons thereof. So make sure you review that stuff, right? And then finally, the last thing, big topic you'll probably see from organization module number 6 is the whole topic of diversity and building a diverse workforce. What is the advantage of that? What are the potentials of that? And how do you really get the best out of a diverse workforce? All right, so that's module number 6, stuff you should review from that module to make sure you do well on those questions. Next comes module number 7. Module number 7 on operations, which of course is simply a fancy word for production, the production of products, goods, or services, right? And so one of the things that comes out of this chapter is the differences between producing services versus producing goods. And we dealt with that not only in the video lectures, but the text as well. You need to know that producing services and goods are different, not simply because services are generally intangible and goods are tangible. No, it goes much deeper than that. And that is because there are some uniquenesses to delivering services. Like in many cases, the customer has to directly be there in contact with staff in order to deliver the service. For instance, haircuts, massages, those kinds of things, right? Not all services, but many services need the customer to be there and in some ways directly involved in the process of the service in order to deliver that. Not so true about goods, of course, right? Goods you can manufacture ahead of time, store in warehouses and inventory. You just can't do that with many services, right? So some big differences there. In addition, this is the chapter where we introduced the whole concept of utility. Remember, form utility, time utility, place utility. Make sure you review those concepts, right? As well as the whole idea that your prior decisions about strategy in the marketplace will end up driving very practical decisions about production and operations, right? And so we gave you in this module a couple of examples, right? If you want to be a low-cost grocery store, that strategic decision is going to drive many of your practical production and supply chain decisions. And so you need to be aware of what is your prior strategic decisions and how might that impact specific practical decisions about operations and production, all right? You really should, by the way, understand the differences and ways that you distinguish these three primary forms of utility that we gave you in the text. That may be the topic of one of your short answer questions. All right, so make sure you bone up on that and review that module. Then next we lead to module number 8, which is our first of 2 modules on the topic of leadership. Make sure that you understand the whole concept of situational leadership, and then also realize module 8 is the module that talks about different theories of employee motivation. So you should review, for instance, the theory of expectancy theory of motivation, right, which essentially suggests that your employees are only going to be motivated by rewards to the degree that, 1, they want and value the reward, and number 2, they feel that the reward is actually attainable, right? And so those 2 things have to be there for a reward to be effectively motivating for employees, right? That's the expectancy theory, which is completely different, really, if you think about it, than the equity theory. The equity theory of motivation basically says people want a fair workplace. And if they believe that the employer deals with all employees fairly and justly, they will be greater motivated. For instance, the equity theory suggests that I, as an employee, am going to look at the level of my effort versus what I typically get back in rewards for that effort. And I'm going to compare that to how other employees get rewards for their effort. And if it feels like, well, that dude over there puts out more effort and he ends up with better rewards, and this guy over here doesn't put out as much effort as I do and therefore doesn't get the same level of rewards that I do, then you sort of think of that as, well, that's all fair, right? And that will basically motivate me to put out more effort. However, if it appears to me, my perception is that this guy over here gets better rewards, but he doesn't nearly put out the effort that I do, right? And then basically the conclusion is that's not fair. And that is summarily demotivating for employees if their perception is that the ratio of inputs to outputs doesn't seem just or equitable or fair in the broad expanse of all of the workforce. All right, so those are a couple of different theories on motivation. You're going to see some other things in this module as well. For instance, the whole topic of the psychological contract. You should review that, as well as Theory X managers versus Theory Y managers. Make sure you review that and understand, right? Theory X managers generally a pretty negative view on employees and what employees want, but Theory Y managers a rather positive view on who employees are, what motivates them, what they want out of work, right? Make sure you review all of those things. And then really what Module 8 begins and ends with is a discussion of employee engagement. What is employee engagement? What's the current rate of employee engagement in the United States? As well as really, what is it that employees really want? And I would just note that if you did not really review the last video in the video lecture series for Module 8, you probably got that question wrong on the quiz because it presumes that you have really gotten the answer to that question. What are the 4 things employees want from the last lecture deck? So make sure you review all that stuff in Module 8. All right. One of the things you really are going to get that you really need to make sure you're boned up on in Module 8 is Herzberg's 2-factor theory. Make sure you review that. The 2-factor theory of Herzberg suggests there are 2 primary buckets of things that motivate employees. On the one hand, bucket number 1, stuff that will lead either to an employee being actively dissatisfied, if you don't have them, or not dissatisfied if you got them. And in this bucket of things are things like a safe workplace, do you have good relationships with your boss and with your colleagues, and your paycheck, okay? Now, that's one bucket of things. The other bucket of things is leads to, if you have them, true job satisfaction. But if you don't have them, Herzberg suggests it doesn't mean you're actively dissatisfied. It just means you're not getting job satisfaction out of your job, right? Now, when you review that in the text, it may be a little confusing because you may be thinking, wait a minute, am I satisfied or not? And really what Herzberg is suggesting is 3 different possible states: being actively dissatisfied, being actively satisfied, or this middle realm where you are neither getting job satisfaction or actively dissatisfied. And while that may seem confusing, let me give you just a basic illustration of this, right? Many college students have a college student kind of a job to help them pay bills while they're primarily focusing on their education, right? Maybe that's serving cappuccinos, right, in a coffee shop, or as a server in a restaurant, right? And let me put it this way: if you have, have drinks on Friday night with your friends, and they ask you, "Hey, how's the job going?" Here's what you'll probably say: "Hey, I guess it's okay. My boss has been really understanding of my school schedule and scheduling me, and the money's what I thought it would be for this kind of a job. I don't have anything to complain about. But, honestly, I'm not going to be working there very long. I mean, it's just while I'm in school. It's not like my career, right?" I mean, you get my point, right? It's a job where you're not actively dissatisfied, but at the same time, you're not getting a high level of job satisfaction out of it, and you don't think of it as a long-term stop for you, right? That's exactly what the 2-factor theory is talking about. Now, here's the point. Money is in the first bucket. In other words, if you're being paid sufficiently, all that means is you won't be actively dissatisfied with your job. But money is not the source of job satisfaction in Herzberg's theory. Now, what does this mean? Well, turn this around. If you're leading employees and you realize no matter how much money I give them, it's not really going to lead to long-term job satisfaction, then how do you motivate them? You can't just throw money at people and expect them to derive really deep, heartfelt job satisfaction. It isn't quite how it works. And quite frankly, as a leader, you're probably going to run out of budget before you can throw that much money at your employees anyway. So, how do you adjust your thinking on motivation if you can't use financial rewards to really lead them to true job satisfaction? Give that some thought. Review that in the text, all right? Now, after that comes module number 9. Module number 9 on leadership and decision making. And so this is where we encounter, the answer to the question, well, how do leaders persuade and compel followers to do what they need to do? And that is through the exercise of social power. So make sure you review the 5 forms of social power, the appropriate uses of reward power, the appropriate uses of coercive power. So make sure that you're able to intelligently discuss that kind of stuff. This is also the module in which you get the discussion on emotional intelligence and some discussion of personality factors and how they affect the effectiveness of leadership, right? So make sure you review all those things. Make sure you understand what are the 5 elements of emotional intelligence, how do you grow those things, right? You should be conversant in that as well. And finally, that brings us to module number 10. Module number 10 of course, this is the module you just finished up on marketing, right? So all this should be real fresh in your head, right? So there's the definition of marketing, right? What is marketing? Marketing is not just getting people to buy stuff. Okay? Marketing is the creation, communication, and delivery of value to consumers, right? So there is, a short discussion there about marketing for tangible versus intangible products and services. What is this whole thing that we talk about when we use the term market differentiation? You should review that in the text. How does market research lead to market segmentation and understanding market demographics, right? Those are all terms that you should be familiar with out of the module, out of the video lectures. And really, the big thing out of this chapter, which will also be a topic of a short answer question, right? The marketing mix and the 4 Ps of the marketing mix. Make sure you are very, very aware. What are the 4 Ps in the marketing mix? And collectively, how do we use the 4 Ps to accomplish the marketing function? All right? That is, generally speaking, what we are talking about in this midterm. I think it's pretty straightforward. I think that if you have kept up on each of these 5 modules, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, you will do very well on this midterm exam. So before you start it, remember, make sure you're all reviewed and boned up on all this material in these 5 modules. Again, you will have 120 minutes or 2 hours to complete this exam whenever you start it. It's intended for you to complete in one sitting, and it will be open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Make sure you complete it before Saturday at 11:59 p.m. All righty? Good luck on the exam. I hope you study and review well for it, and we'll catch you in the next module.